Welcome to Sex Crimes Defense Podcast with Chance and Jay. Chance Oberstein is a defense attorney who handles sex crimes in California. I'm a media professional. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be legal advice. Chance, we're going to take a look at Jeffrey Epstein.
Okay, this is gonna be a closer look. We're gonna try to start from the beginning, I suppose, so we can wrap our head around this whole thing.
You are correct. Who is Jeffrey Epstein?
Well, I mean, in short, he was a wealthy American financier who became globally notorious for orchestrating a vast sex trafficking network involving underage girls. His life was a disturbing blend of high society connections and criminal exploitation. That is the short story, and that is the short explanation.
So I'm now what I'm doing right now because I've done a lot of homework. I think the whole world has at this point more homework than they ever expected. So I'm trying to recall what I thought before and what I think now because I know a lot more now than I did before. You know, at first glance, he's kind of elusive, right? Who is this guy? How does he make his money? How is he able to do this? Is it as bad as it sounds? Right? But upon doing homework, you learn so he kind of got a teaching career early on, which he kind of falsified a little bit. Then he got into Wall Street, again kind of falsified quite a bit. But yet he's very talented at something.
Well, let's just take a look at, just a short definitive look at his rise, because when we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein, we're talking about a guy who grew up in New York and he's a middle class guy. So, you know, his early work didn't start off as a financer, didn't start off as a money guy. Started off as a college dropout. I mean, he was, and this is the funny part. He started as a teacher at the elite Dalton School in New York City, despite lacking a college degree. I don't know how that happens. And then he moved into baking at Bear Stearns, then founded his own investment firm, reportedly managing money for billionaires. Now, here's the mystery. His exact sources of wealth remain unclear. And that fuels speculation and scrutiny, which is, I think, what you're talking about right now, because you're kind of like speculating because no one really has their hands on this, right?
He reminds me of the Catch Me If You Can guy that kind of built a
Uh-huh.
future and success, quote unquote, around mysterious means.
Well, apparently he was gifted in some way to generate money, especially for others, which socially connected him. And that's where this thing takes off, because he managed to pierce elite circles, maintained relationships with powerful figures, including Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, and others, of which are not named here and which we do not know. That's the issue, isn't it? I mean, he owned through the generation of the monies he made, he purchased an island, St. James, in the U.S. Virgin Islands, which became infamous as the site of alleged sexual abuse.
Yeah, so it doesn't through the homework I've done, I still don't understand how he got so much money. And so through the falsification and however it seems he found ways. I'm wondering if it involves blackmail of some sort.
I don't know, but certainly he pierced the elite circles of money and power, and he benefited from that. He became very wealthy.
I wonder if he realized how to make large amounts of money by I think part of his makeup is that he didn't seem to have qualms about his sexual desires, but other people did. So he found a way to make money off of their problems connected to sexual deviance.
Well, you've got to kind of separate it a little bit because he definitely managed money for billionaires. That he
Right.
did.
And
But
right, in a legal way through Wall Street.
right.
Right.
But he also tapped into not only their desire to increase their wealth, but their desires. Their
Correct. Their
right.
secret
Their
desires.
secret desires. That's where he connected. I mean, and where did that take him? Okay, because we don't know anybody else that suffered the consequences except him and his associate. But where did that take him? Where did that get him? Well, in 2008, it got him convicted in Florida for soliciting prostitution from a minor, in which he served 13 months with work release under a controversial non-prosecution agreement. How do you get those? How do you get a non-prosecution agreement?
Right. And this agreement is actually a huge problem and major milestone in his story. One of the things I want to bring up leading up to the 2000 non-prosecution agreement is in the preceding 5 or 10 years to 2008 is what led up to the massive volume of victims that we know about today. And the quantity of victims really does put him as number one on the prolific sex crimes uh, pr- uh
Public enemies,
public. I mean,
public
right?
enemies
What do you?
list.
He
Yeah.
is the godfather of sex crimes as far as we now know it in America. I think, as you said, in the past, what, 100 years? I mean, he is now number one.
Well, he's certainly known as, but what's known about him and what we're talking about is only the tip of the iceberg. Apparently, I say apparently because I don't know, but apparently, and he gets this conviction in Florida in 2008, and then he's charged federally with sex trafficking of minors in New York and Florida in 2019. And so this is really interesting because New York and Florida, can you imagine how many powerful and wealthy names would emanate from New York and Florida?
Totally. That that begs another question. What was happening between 2008 and 2019? How does a guy like Jeffrey Epstein fly under the radar for 11 years?
Well, that's a really good question, especially because he was so well known. And apparently, his style change, or his lifestyle, should I say, was well recognized by the rich and famous, the powerful and the elite.
He, in fact, flew under the radar for probably 11 to 15 years before 2008. Not only is he number one on the Godfather of sex crimes list, but he's number one of flying under the radar with un, uh, innumerable sex crimes allegations.
Well, it wasn't a sex crime allegation in 2008, it was a conviction. So the question is, how does a convicted sex offender continue to live this lavish lifestyle and do these things, and maintain anonymity? How does that happen?
And the only answer is money, power, and influence.
Okay, well, that is the real mystery, and that is the real challenge of this whole story. This is what's powering this whole thing. This is what's putting the wind in its sails as far as social media goes and news and everything else. This is what everybody's talking about because only a very tiny bit of information is known, correct?
Uh yes and no. Yet only a tiny bit of information is known about the money, power, influence. Quite a bit of information has been gathered about alleged victims. And at the point, I'm almost afraid to even say alleged. There are so many victims now, it's impossible to side with his version of reality.
Well, we'll never know because his version died out in 2019 in
Ah,
this apparent suicide thing. When I
ah,
say
and
apparent, well, let me say let me step back a little bit. Alleged suicide.
yeah, I know.
What do you
Uh,
think about that? What do you think
so
about that?
I've been doing they talk about internet sleuthing, and what's fascinating is that Jeffrey Epstein was not something we could actually talk about even 6 months ago. But the whole world is now internet sleuthing this guy, this topic, the whole thing. And now I'm internet sleuthing right along with them. I mean, there's we're in July 2025, and there is daily news about what's going on with Epstein. So when we go to the suicide, they're now reviewing the tapes. They're reviewing, when I say they, I mean anybody who can get their hands on it. I watched the psychologists talk about it. There's new photos being released in traditional media right now about me. There had to be somebody that must have seen something because there's weird images. It's weird, even just the cell. The camera angle of his cell, you can't really see. It's hard. If you don't know that, what do they call them? Cell block?
Well, yeah, the apparently when you look at the tape that was released by the Department of Justice, what you're looking at is a fixed camera that is fixed on the commons. So the commons mean the area all cells share. There's a stairway going from the commons, and then to the right is another block of cells, including his cell. And it looks like, from what I see, there's a separate entrance to the cell if you keep on walking down the hallway. So what we're looking at is cells he did not occupy for something we don't see. And even that is flawed because there's time cut out of that because you can look at the time sequences that are given on the actual footage.
I mean, here's a question. Are there no other cameras in that cell block area? Is that the only one?
Well, I imagine because it's a prison.
Okay.
I imagine that there's cameras covering every single angle, not for the safety of the prisoners, but for the safety of the guards in case
Right.
there's a riot or anything else. And they need to monitor these areas 24/7. So we're looking through one cam, but I'm sure there's many cams. We're only getting the sequence from one cam, which is focused on anything but his cell during what they allege is the time that he committed suicide, if that at all is the case. But
We're
the
going to
bigger question is this: why would he commit suicide?
There you go. We're going to pick up on his suicide, alleged suicide. We don't know. Join us for part 2 of Sex Crimes Defense Podcast with Chance and Jay.